Okay, let's now go over to the PFL side of this weekend's action, and then we'll end with a little bit of trivia. Early night, boys. I like it. The night is young.
We got 5 more fights to preview here. Don't get too excited.
That's true.
The night is young. We all go to bed before midnight.
No, for real. All right. Very exciting. PFL 1 kicking off the 2023 PFL season. Here we go. Going down this weekend, the theater at Virgin Hotels in Las Vegas. This weekend's event will be featherweights and light heavyweights. Before we talk about the 5 fights we're going to break down on the main card, any other fights or fighters you guys just want to spotlight for our listeners?
This is going to be unique for me, but no, not really.
Yeah.
Yeah, if he don't have one, I definitely do fucking have.
Okay. Let us begin.
But I do love these main 5 fights, like a lot.
Yep.
Hell yeah.
I'm pretty pumped for this card.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah. So we have 3 featherweight bouts and 2 light heavyweight bouts on the main card of PFL 1. Here we go. Opening the main card in the featherweight division, we have Chris Wade taking on rematching Bubba Jenkins. Chris Wade, the Long Island Killer, 35 years old, out of Long Island, New York. Hey, both guys are 35 in this matchup, so fuck you.
Mike is torn.
I know, they're both a little old. Chris Wade.
Someone's going to fall off, and it's going to happen.
Someone's gonna fall off and look 35.
Mike's looking up their birthdays, which month each one is.
I can tell you right now. God damn it. Fucking Chris Wade's like 4 months older, it looks like. So
people are going to click on just our PFL clip, and they're going to be like, what the fuck are these guys talking about?
Yeah, for real.
If you're confused, go back to the end of the Bellator clip.
That's right. Chris Wade, 35 years old, out of Long Island. He's 22-8 as a pro. 15 wins by decision. He is coming off of a loss at the hands of Brendan Loughnane, I believe, in the semifinals of last year's playoffs. Of course, he beat Bubba Jenkins in their 2021 PFL semifinal match, advancing to the finals of 2021, losing in a unanimous decision to Movlid Khaybulaev. I can't say his name right now.
Khaybulaev, I'm pretty sure.
Khaybulaev. Also of note, Wade went 5-2 in the UFC, and he is the former Ring of Combat ROC champion, lightweight champion out in New York, a New York regional promotion of note. Bubba Jenkins, I'm a bad man. That is his nickname. I'm a bad man. The 35-year-old out of Corona, California, 19-6 as a pro, 10 wins by finish, also coming off of a loss at the hands of Brendan Loughnane in last year's playoffs. Mark, please start us off. Give us your take and your pick of this rematch between Bubba Jenkins and Chris Wade.
I like this rematch. I like the talent of both of these guys. Odds are fairly tight. Chris Wade, maybe not surprisingly considering he won the first time, is minus 175. Bubba the Bodman is plus 140. Wade is 2 inches taller, but Bubba's 2 inches longer, so pretty equal overall in that department. Chris Wade was able to take a clear decision the first time in this matchup. I do think Bubba has been a clearly improving fighter since that time. He looked really good in his last 3 wins before getting stopped by Brendan Loughnane in last year's championship. But I don't think he's improved enough to change the result of this matchup. Neither guy's a finisher, so I think that we're seeing the cards. Neither guy is a terribly effective striker, I wouldn't say. So I think for the most part, this is just going to be like a scrambly fight that comes down to who can stuff the takedowns of the other. And as good of a wrestler as Bubba Jenkins is, I just think Chris Wade is the slicker and more effective MMA wrestler and grappler. So I will roll with Chris Wade to make it 2-0 and add another win over Bubba to the resume by decision.
Omar.
Honestly, man, my take is not very far from Mark's. I think Chris Wade is also, just to add on, I think he's the stronger fighter physically. I think he'll be able to have a little bit more control on the ground just based off of his, separate from his technique and his ability to stay on top in his ground game. I think physically he's just more imposing. I do think this rematch probably goes very similarly. We might see some adjustments maybe in the first round, maybe to try to get Chris Wade off of his game a little bit, especially considering he kind of knows how Bubba Jenkins fights, I would assume, to a certain extent at this point. So Bubba might break out something different in the first round, but I think Chris Wade adjusts to it, and I think things go even more smooth in the second and third round for a unanimous decision.
Well, we are unanimous in taking Chris Wade, and I also think that Chris Wade is going to notch another UD win on his record. I think he has Bubba Jenkins' number, and he will advance to the next round of the featherweights tournament for this year for PFL. Okay. The 2021 winner of PFL featherweights, Movlid Khaybulaev. I keep fucking second guessing myself for his name. Taking on
Khaybulaev, I think. Movlid Khaybulaev.
Thank you.
I think. I'm trying to remember. The dude hasn't fought in 2 years, so I feel like I can't even remember how he says it. But that's what's in my brain.
Okay. Taking on Ryoji Kudo. So, real quick. Khaybulaev, 19-0 as a pro. Of course, he is the 2021 PFL featherweight tournament winner. He also has one draw and one no contest. Of his 19 wins, 11 have come by decision. In March of last year, 2022, the PFL announced via their Twitter that he was injured and could not defend his featherweight crown in the 2022 season. And Brendan Loughnane, who lost in the 2021 tournament to him, Loughnane lamented his inability to have a rematch with the champ, but admitted that he was relieved to not have to fight him again. And Loughnane was the winner last year, of course, so perhaps they will meet again. And real quick, let me pull up Ryoji. How do you say his name?
Kudo.
There we go.
I'm so interested to know what this line is because Khaybulaev has got to be a fucking like a minus 1,000 or something, crazy set. This fight seems fucking dumb if we're being completely honest. This doesn't. Man. So this fight doesn't seem to make any actual sense.
Kudo, 29 years old, out of Japan, 11-4 as a pro with one draw, 7 knockouts, 4 decisions. Lost to Bubba Jenkins last year. Omar, start us off. Give us your take and your pick.
I need the line. I need to know what this line is.
Okay, Mark, you jump in first with the line.
You're not far off. Movlid is minus 700. Kudo is plus 500.
That is a lot smaller than I thought, though. Yeah, this fight seems crazy to me. If we were at like the top of the division, I feel like the tippity top, you know, I think you kind of can't avoid fights really. But stylistically, this seems like a terrible fight for Kudo, and almost seems like a gift for Movlid. I think he kills him, man. I think he takes him to the ground. And I think he kind of does really whatever he wants to him. I don't even think he breaks a sweat in the first round trying to do it either. I think Kudo is going to be very. He might have a little bit of confidence right at the very beginning, but I think that goes away real quick. And I think he's tentative throughout most of the fight. I think he probably is on his back most of the fight. I think, like we've talked about, I don't think they're finishers. But, man, I think if there's anybody that Movlid can finish, it might just be Kudo. So I'm going to go with Movlid by third round submission.
Mark?
So, yeah, I gave you the lines already. Movlid is a big favorite. Kudo has a 1-inch height and 1-inch reach advantage, so they're pretty similar in that department. But I don't think that's the case in talent. I think this one is a mismatch. same as Omar. I think that Movlid is one of the most underrated featherweights in the world today. The man is 19-0 with a draw and a no contest. He knocked out Damon Jackson with a flying knee. He beat Lance Palmer. He beat Brendan Loughnane. He beat Chris Wade. He hasn't fought since October of 2021, so he hasn't necessarily been top of mind as of late, but I think he reannounces himself here and starts a push to do exactly what you said, which is to potentially meet Brendan Loughnane in a rematch to determine this year's PFL champ. I'll play it a little bit safe. I'm going to say Movlid by UD, but a submission wouldn't shock me at all, nor would any type of finish really, but I'm going to say decision, just a little rust being a factor. I don't know why, I just have that vibe. But clear.
I'm going to change mine to TKO, actually. There's something about the way I see this fight in my head and Kudo kind of wanting to get up off the ground that I feel like a lot of strikes are just going to end up piling on top of each other throughout the fight, and it's going to get to a point where the ref's just going to call it.
Okay. And Mark, what'd you have?
UD.
Yeah, I'm also going to go with Movlid by finish. I think they're going to notch. I'm going to say he's going to get a club and sub. It'll be his third submission win, and Kudo's second consecutive loss by submission and second loss by submission overall as a pro, and second time getting finished as a pro. But I think that I do agree that I think the disparity in skill is there, and Kudo is going to say, man, I'm having a bad time here in the PFL. And he will have lost 3 of his last 4 in the PFL here. But I think that Movlid is for real. I mean, he's kind of the defending champ in a sense, and he's going to show it this weekend. Okay. Moving on to the light heavyweights. We have Krzysztof Jotko making his PFL debut, taking on Will Fleury. So Jotko, the 33-year-old out of Poland, he's 24-6 as a pro, 17 wins by decision. Most recently losing to Brendan Allen in what was his final UFC fight. He will be standing across from Will Fleury, the 34-year-old out of Ireland, 11-3 as a pro. 2 knockouts, 3 subs, 6 decisions. He's riding a 4-fight win streak coming into this weekend. Mark, let's start us off here. Fleury versus Jotko. What's your take?
Okay, so fairly wide. Jotko's minus 340. Will Fleury is plus 260 on the other side. Fleury's 2 inches taller, but let's be honest here. From every single thing we have to go off in regard to both of these men's resumes, you can only pick one guy, and that's Jotko. It's not as if he had some big fall off in the UFC before being cut. He's still won 5 out of his last 7 fights. His last loss, as you said, was to Brendan Allen, who is a stud. Jotko was still very much like an edge of the rankings type guy. 1 win, he could have been right back in them. And Will Fleury's just not. So maybe Jotko doesn't finish him. It's not like he's a prolific finisher, but I think he dictates this whole fight. I think he takes it where he wants it to be. I'll say it sees the cards, but Jotko, clear decision in my mind.
Omar?
Yeah, I'd have to agree, man. Jotko, I want to say Jotko probably is no longer with the UFC because of the kind of performances that he puts on. They are not the most visually fan-friendly. But what you can say is that the man doesn't know how to win, because he definitely does. He's fought some extremely good competition, and he has lost against them. He has also beaten a lot of good guys. Some guys that I guess, in retrospect now maybe have kind of fallen off or whatever, but Jotko was in there with him, man. Misha Serkinov, one of those fighters. Gerald Mershat is another one who I don't think has fallen off, still in the UFC, still very relevant. But names that carry value, like I tend to apparently say a lot in this episode. People like Eric Anders, Marc-Andre Barrio. These are all fantastic fighters that we still see nowadays, still putting in the work. So Jotko is one of these guys that I think has been tested, he's been proven. Even in his losses, I think he still looks relatively good. And I think he will have the tools to beat Will Fleury. I don't think that he will be able to finish him, but I do think it will be a 3-round unanimous decision.
Yeah, his last 3 losses in the UFC were Brad Tavares, who's a very good middleweight, Sean Strickland, who's at the top of the division, and Brendan Allen, who is on a serious surge in his career.
Yeah, Brandon Allen was probably the one to really sun him too, if we're being honest.
Yeah. Okay. Mark, did you go?
Yep. Yeah, it's on you, sir.
Bad. Yeah, I agree. I think in spite of going up in weight here from middleweight up to light heavyweight, I expect Jotko to have an impressive PFL debut against Will Fleury. Yes, I am taking the younger fighter here, but only by 1 year. So, got to keep that trend alive. I will say also Jotko, UD.
It's not even a year, dog. It's like months. They're both 89. They're both my age.
Okay.
Babies.
I think we have 2 more. Okay. Still with the light heavyweights, Rob Wilkinson taking on Thiago Santos. Wilkinson, I believe he won last year, the light heavyweight tournament for PFL.
That's correct.
17-2 as a pro. 31 years old, out of Australia. Of his 17 wins, 9 have come by knockout. 7 have come by submission. And only 1 has gone the distance. And he is riding, as a pro, a 6-fight win streak coming into this weekend. He will be standing across from another former UFC fighter, fresh out of the UFC and making his PFL debut as well, a man named Thiago Marreta Santos, the 39-year-old out of Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. He's 22-11 as a pro, 15 wins by knockout. He is looking to get his first win in the PFL and back in the win column as a professional, coming off back-to-back losses against Magomed Ankalaev and Jamal Hill over in the UFC. Omar, start us off here. Give us your take. The debuting Thiago Santos and Rob Wilkinson, the defending champ.
I am a fan of Thiago Santos. We talked about it on here before when we've previewed some of his other fights. After that John Jones fight, Thiago Santos changed something. It might have to do with the leg injuries that he received, the knee injuries, but something was different about Thiago Santos' approach to the game and the successes that he was, or the lack thereof, I should say, that he was finding inside of the octagon. The last fight that he won was a very close decision against Johnny Walker at a time where people were sunning Johnny Walker. Rob Wilkinson was a guy that last year I didn't really hold in high regard. I didn't really have, I guess, him on my radar. Didn't think he'd be able to do it. And then when he beat Amari Akhmedov, I remember telling myself, and probably you guys, I don't think I'm going to pick against that man the next time I have to pick. And here we are against somebody who on probably normal occasion I'd be picking Thiago Santos because I like Thiago Santos. But I don't like what I've been seeing from Thiago Santos as of late, especially in his last 6 or more fights at this point. So I am going to go with Rob Wilkinson. I want to hope Thiago Santos can at least survive because Rob Wilkinson is a 200-plus sized assassin. So I hope he survives. I don't know if he will. But I'm going to go with the unanimous decision, Rob Wilkinson.
Okay, Mark.
This is my favorite fight of the weekend, very easily. Probably going to talk for a minute here on this one. Rob Wilkinson's the favorite. He's minus 190. Thiago Santos is plus 150 as the underdog. This is a big fight. This feels like the real main event to me. The purpose that this fight is serving is to kind of let us all find out just how good Rob Wilkinson is. For those who may not know, Rob Wilkinson is a guy who's 17-2 overall. He did have a 2-fight UFC stint at middleweight, and that's where both of those losses came from. One, of course, was to Izzy. The other one was to Siar Bahadurzada, which doesn't look quite as good. But after the Izzy loss and leaving the UFC, he moved up to light heavyweight, where he has now won 6 straight. And more importantly, he has reinvented himself as a striker. He was once a guy who was purely looking to wrestle with you. And that is no more. He has 6 straight finishes, 5 of them by KO or TKO. He's mauling dudes. But at the same time, the level of competition is a little bit less. So it's been hard to gauge just how good he might be. And now insert Thiago Santos. We're going to find out. Yes, Santos is on a slide in his career, but slide or no slide, he just beat Johnny Walker only like a year plus ago. He's beaten guys like Jan Blachowicz. And even in this losing streak, all his losses are to absolute studs. Jamal Hill's the champ. Magomed Ankalaev might have been the champ if he didn't get a weird scorecard. Alexander Rakic is right there. Glover Teixeira was the champ. John Jones is the greatest. And mind you, he took a scorecard off Jones. He's the only person still to this day to ever take a scorecard off John Jones. So, slide or no slide, if Rob Wilkinson beats Thiago Santos, especially if he finishes him, he's going to get legitimized pretty quickly as a real deal light heavyweight in the world of MMA. He has the size here, too, despite how big Santos is. Wilkinson is 1 inch taller, and he has a 4-inch reach advantage, which is pretty significant. So I've talked about the storyline a lot. I won't do so much about the actual matchup. I'm not ready to pick against the run of violence that Rob Wilkinson is on. He hits hard. He pushes such a pace, as we saw against Akhmedov. And Santos has just looked too tentative to me. Is it possible that this Wilkinson style is the one that finally brings it out of Santos and we get a war? Maybe, in which case all bets are off because the Santos who wars is super dangerous. But I'm not positive that guy still exists in there, and it's easier for me to trust what Wilkinson is doing right now. So I will say Rob Wilkinson, round 2, TKO.
Yeah, I agree with both of you guys. At this point, it's hard to pick Thiago Santos. I agree that all of these losses have been against great competition. And I believe that he at least was once considered one of the greats in the UFC at 205 pounds at /185. But that going up against the onslaught, that is Rob Wilkinson, who also, in part of his career, has fought at lower weights, at a lower weight. Doesn't matter this weekend. I'm ignoring the fucking fact that Rob Wilkinson is 8 years older.
Younger.
Oh, younger, excuse me. And I will go with the defending champion and Rob Wilkinson. And I'm going to say that Rob Wilkinson stops Thiago Santos. I will say by knockout. And I'll say second round. Here we go. Main event time. Brendan Loughnane taking on Marlon Moraes. Brendan Loughnane, the defending PFL featherweight tournament winner, the 33-year-old out of England. He is 25-4 as a pro, 13 knockouts on his record, riding a 4-fight win streak as a professional coming into this weekend, starting us off with this tournament this year. Marlon Moraes, a 34-year-old out of Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, 23-11, 1 draw, 10 knockouts, 6 subs. He is desperately looking to get back in the win column, riding a 5-fight losing streak and also losing 6 of his last 7 coming into this weekend. Mark, start us off. Give us your take and your pick.
This one should be a lot quicker because I don't love this fight. They're trying to use my boy Marlon as food here. I know that's the name of the game sometimes in MMA, but I don't love it. Loughnane's a big favorite, minus 675. Marlon Moraes is plus 475 as the underdog. Brendan's going to have a 3-inch height and a 4.5-inch reach advantage against the career bantamweight in Moraes. Brendan's looked awesome as of late. He's better every single time we see him, and I don't think this is going to go well for Marlon. It's crazy because the talent for Marlon is still clearly there, right? So it's not as if he's not live in these fights, especially in round 1. It's just that the chin seems to be all the way gone. So that last loss to Shaman Moraes is what really cemented that for me. So he could look okay here. It could be interesting until he gets hit cleanly and starts to get hurt, but I just don't think it's going to take all that long before he starts reacting badly. It does maybe help him stay live that Loughnane's not exactly like any kind of knockout artist, but I just think he'll start to land clean, and you'll see the fight change. And I'll say by round 2, it really starts to go south, and that Loughnane's able to get a takedown or end up on the ground in some fashion and just kind of get Marlon out of there with ground and pound. So I will take Brendan by round 2 TKO.
Omar.
I was listening to an interview that Brendan was giving with Ariel, and he had a take that I thought was with Anik and Florian, and he had a take that I thought was very interesting about Marlon Moraes and how, his chin is definitely compromised at this point. I don't think there's any dispute about that. But he also said that Marlon is one of the elites, one of the greatest. At this point, he's fought a lot of these amazing fighters. He's been in the game for so long, and yet the man still apparently doesn't really know how to pace himself properly. And I think that's really where he gets into trouble. Those first rounds, just like Mark alluded to, those first rounds can be hell for the guy standing across from Marlon Moraes. But if you get through that first round, Marlon's got a second round in him, but that second round becomes a lot more competitive. And then that third round is where things start to take a different turn. Marlon starts to slow down. Marlon's hands start to stay a little bit lower. The defense starts to get lacking a little bit. And the durability, I think, at this point over the last few fights, not even like the last fight, the last few fights, the durability has been, at best, questionable. At worst, gone. And it's scary, man. I like Marlon Moraes. I've been a fan of his since... Bro, there was a time where Mark Henry, at the height of Frankie Edgar's career, was talking about this guy at the gym in Jersey training with these killers, and he's ready to come to the UFC. He's ready to run over everybody. He's ready to take on everybody that's over there. And, Marlon Moraes had a lot of hype, and he never really lived up to it, unfortunately. And, while we've seen a lot of great fights from him, I think we've all expected better overall performances, and hopefully he does that here. But I'm going to go with Brendan Loughnane here by unanimous decision.
Of course, Marlon Moraes will always have the claim that he sent the current UFC bantamweight champion to the shadow realm with a head kick / knee. That being said, there is no way that I can pick Marlon Moraes this weekend over the defending champion in Loughnane. So I will take Loughnane. I will say that he gets Marlon Moraes out of there in the late rounds. I'll say 4th round, TKO. That's it. We did it.
There you have
That's the show.
Yo, you just got me thinking now. It was one thing when I thought Brendan Loughnane couldn't finish Marlon, but there is a thing where I feel like Marlon, once he's in fucked up positions, I don't want to use the term gives up, but sort of panics.
Yep.
And
That's
sort of
exactly what I'm envisioning.
Right? Like the hands in the air, him getting hit on the ground. And I'm changing mine on this one too. I'm going TKO.
TKO.
TKO round 3.